What's up, gamers? It's your boy, JKon. Welcome to another episode of Pros and Cons. Today, we'll be talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Warning, spoilers ahead. Before we hop into it, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the noti bell. Let's get into it. First of all, we have to talk about the animation. I think the standout of the entire performance of the movie itself is the animation. If you've watched Into the Spider-Verse, which was the first entry into this Miles Morales story, it was definitely a beautiful spectacle of animation. I think Into the Spider-Verse was one of those movies that really pushed animation into a whole nother level and really upped the standard of what animation and, to be honest, what superhero movies could really be. So I'm really happy that we had such a great foundation to build upon because, brother, let me tell you, they built upon that foundation. If there is one thing that you can definitely say about this movie is that you will not be bored by the animation style at all, because every animation style is included in the movie. You're going to see a lot of different Spider-Men that have different animation effects that come with them, and it doesn't feel out of place when they are on screen with a underlying denominator background, because each of them are so uniquely animated to their own universe that they're their own character in this convoluted multiversal world. Anyways, I think the way that they used animation was just incredibly beautiful, weaving in normal animation ties as well as adding comic book ties to the animation itself. I think that was one of my favorite things that they did in Into the Spider-Verse, was adding those little comic book sound effects or movements that really helped bring the comics to life, and having that in the medium of animation, it just adds to the effect itself, and I am a fan. Continuing on, talking about the animation, just the background scenes and every universe that they ended up going through was just so beautiful. It really helped identify the unique universes that not only did they get to visit, but also where the other Spider-Man came from. And those kind of environments really are hard to show easily. And I think that's where the realm of animation is just the best platform to show that. So number one point for sure is that the animation was absolutely insane. Even if you don't like superhero movies, if you're a fan of any form of animation whatsoever, this is just a spectacle to watch. And I 100% say that you should just watch it just for the animation alone. It is that good. Now we're going to move into the movie breakdown and continuing on these pros. I loved the opening scene of the movie. The movie opens up with a kind of watercolor-esque that is moving and grooving across the screen in the beat of a drum. And guess who is playing that drum? Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy is now living in a world where she has met other spider people, know that there's other people like her that are in other places, and she can no longer get to them. And seeing how that canyon between her and her friendship with Miles really affects how she feels really is shown in just a few short scenes of animation. How she felt very isolated and angry that she can't tell the people who she loves who she is. And I think that's always going to be the Spider-Man problem. That's always been the Spider-Man problem of juggling, telling your loved ones and the people you care about and having a secret identity. So I think just showing Gwen in this state early on, as well as showing how her universe was animated, was just beautiful. And I think it was a great way to start out the movie, as it's a nice transition to kind of show that time has elapsed since the previous movie. Moving on, I thought another pro for the movie was that the pace of the story was really well done. It's a 144-minute animated movie, which is one of the longest, if not the longest animated movie ever made. That's almost 2.5 hours long, but it doesn't feel like 2.5 hours. You are not bored at any point. And I think that is one of the greatest things that makes this movie honestly the masterpiece that it is. And straight up, it's because there's no dull point. There's always either an emotional chord that the movie is trying to share with you, or it's an intense moment, or even just funny. Let me tell you, just the movie is funny. And I think that's always been one of my favorite things about Spider-Man movies, are the facts that Spider-Man is supposed to be a funny character. He's like an anxious, nervous kind of guy, but he gets past that by being funny and quippy. And I think that's great. And Miles is a great embodiment of that. Sorry, that was kind of a tangent away from the pace of the story. But the pacing of the story was really, really well done. And it just moved from plot point to plot point quite fluidly. And there really wasn't any dull points or slow moments. Jumping back a little bit to the idea of animation and how they were kind of stylistically put together, I thought that the blending of the different styles of animation was really, really well done. And when they allowed a character from a different universe to kind of adopt a little bit more of the animation style. For example, when Gwen Stacy goes to her animated world, it's more of a watercolor animation. Whereas when she goes to Miles's universe, she is shown in Miles's animation. So that was one of the things where kind of the overlaying didn't happen as much, but it wasn't unnatural for a different animation to look good in another form in a different universe. So I just thought it was just really, really well done. Continuing on about overlaying animations, when you get to the Spider-Verse portion of the movie, it's crazy. As I said earlier, kind of any art style that you can imagine, any animation style that you can imagine, any form that you could think that Spider-Man could appear in, a cat, a T-Rex, a cowboy, a robot, a samurai, etc., they have that. Every single iteration, I'm pretty sure if you did a slow-mo breakdown like 0.025 speed, slow down every single frame and watch it. I'm pretty sure there's a YouTube channel that does something like that. You'll probably find one random Spider-Man that you can think of. They put everything in there. And I thought it was super, super nice that they did that. I thought it was really cool. And just seeing kind of like the Council of Ricks, but it's the Council of Spider-Man of just a collection of them interacting with one another was just really cool. And this is going to be a minor spoiler. It doesn't really do anything. But there's a moment where there's an order of quote unquote get Spider-Man. And every Spider-Man in there does the Spider-Man. I love that meme. That is one of my favorite memes of all time. And just having that in the moment right there, I busted out laughing. I ain't gonna lie. I was cracking up. I thought it was hilarious just because that meme hit home so well. And it looked natural. Even if they were in a common denominator universe and animation style, they still were unique to their original animation. A perfect example of where the animation that was overlaid into a different form of animation in the universe that was really well done was the Renaissance Vulture. I thought when they brought him in to fight Miles and Gwen and just having him use his different weapons and feathers and how they kind of stood out compared to the background was really, really unique. And I definitely think he stood out as one of the best animations. Now we're getting into a little bit of a spoiler territory here. Everything that I'm going to kind of be talking about from now on will be spoilers. If you don't want to hear it, I am sorry. You don't come to me for non-spoiler stuff. So here's your spoiler warning. Moving into it. Indian Spider-Man. Holy! I thought Indian Spider-Man was one of the greatest characters that they introduced. I thought Mumbattan, that universe that they teleported into, was so freaking cool. It was so cool. The fact that they kind of had an Inception-esque world where it was almost limitless to the depth that they could fall down. When you enter into the city, you're at the top, at the peak. And as you go through the carnage of that scene, you are going down. And you just have an infinite feeling of falling endlessly into the void of this Indian-based world. It was so good. I thought Indian Spider-Man was a really great way to just have another representation of Spider-Man that just had the quips. Man, Indian Spider-Man was freaking hilarious. I was dying at every single one of his lines. One of the lines that he said was, "Oh, I don't understand why people talk about chai tea. Chai is tea." And I love that because that's definitely a conversation that I have with people. I think it's so funny that we call things duplicate names, especially when it's foreign. Chai tea. Chai is tea. Naan bread. Naan is bread. And just having a character that kind of has that cultural background to call that out in a multi-universal world where anything could go, like having an Indian Spider-Man is crazy enough, let alone this entire universe based off of an Indian Spider-Man, like it's crazy. So I just thought that was really, really nice. I thought it was fun, and Indian Spider-Man is just beautiful. Continuing on to Indian Spider-Man, I thought that the reveal of canon points, I thought that having a baseline explanation as to how Spider-Man's canon works and how you must stick to the canon, I thought that concept was really, really nice. I think that's kind of a complication or problem that comes into any adaptation, is that a lot of people will always want people to be faithful to the canon. It has to be canon. It has to go in line with what people originally said. So I love the fact that a core attribute of this movie is the fact that you don't have to always follow the canon. Anyways, I thought canon points was really, really nice. I love the way they kind of unveiled and revealed the impact of canon points, and how they design the plot to lead you in a different direction. But once you get the understanding of what canon points were, the rest of the plot really, really comes together. I'm trying not to go into like super spoilers because I don't want to ruin the movie completely, but I thought that was just, that was beautiful. Another character that I thought was a big W that I loved was Hobie, or Spider-Punk, played by Daniel Kaluuya. Single-handedly, Spider-Punk being animated into the movie was the best aspect of animation that was shown in the entire movie, in my opinion. I think every time that Spider-Punk was on screen, it was the epitome of what this movie was all about, with the cross animations and sticking to the original unique style of the universe that they come from. And I love that. Spider-Punk is a freaking badass. He is so pimpin'. And just every time he was on screen, you know he's on screen just because, like I said, he is just the epitome of that animation style sticking out in that common denominator, but it works so well. And he's just a great character. Probably one of my favorite characters from this movie for sure. And by far the best aspect of animation. Stand out. Again, if you're an animation fan, even if you don't like superhero movies and you like animation, I'd watch the movie just to watch Spider-Punk. All right, moving on to another character that I really enjoyed was Gwen. I think making Gwen a focus as a kind of secondary protagonist a little bit, and kind of developing her backstory to be more of a protagonist per se outside of just Miles, I thought was nice. Like I've said in my other reviews, I love when side characters get more development. It makes movies and shows what they are. So I think giving Gwen a lot of screen time and helping develop a lot about her personality, her feelings that she's going through, the feeling that she has been going through in the past little bit of time when she was away from Miles, and kind of how that has affected her mental, the way her relationship with her father, who is a hard-nosed cop, and tiptoeing around that relationship and kind of how it got to that teetering point, I think was just so nice, especially because Gwen is such an important part to Miles's arc. So Gwen getting actual real in-depth story was lovely. I love the animation of Gwen in this movie. She was great in the first one, but continuing with her lithe and smooth animation that comes from ballerina-esque moves, and even having her ballerina shoes early on in the movie, it's just so nice to see. It's so cool. I just love how everything is animated. It's so good. Now, speaking of things that I love animated, I alluded earlier that Gwen's world was a kind of watercolor-esque world. And I think the scene with her dad and how they used animation and sound during that portion was one of the most beautifully animated things I think I've ever seen. You'll know it if you've seen it, and it's just... If I wasn't already impressed by Spider-Punk, I think that moment with Gwen and her universe really just solidified in my mind that this movie just took animation and superhero movies and movies in general and pushed the standard to a whole nother level. 100%. All right. I love the return of Peter B. Parker, the mentor from the first movie. Didn't really have as much of a part or story in this movie per se, but he still had a pretty profound effect. I think his minutes on screen were always nice. He is just a really funny, great character. And I just love Jake Johnson. I think he's a great, perfect voice fit for Spider-Man. I don't know why, but it just fits really well. And Peter B. Parker is just the GOAT friend. Moving on, let's talk about Spider-Man 2099. Miguel O'Hara, first played by Oscar Isaac. I thought he did a great job. I love Oscar Isaac, big fan. I thought he was very fitting for the character. I think that he was really, really sick he was just a badass character. The animation that they showed him in, the suit that he carries, the way that his webs are red and more electric, I just love it. I think he is just so intense, and I love his music and his theme that goes with it. It's kind of like the Prowler theme, how Prowler kind of got his own little music and sounds and noises. Miguel also got that too, which was really nice. I liked how they kind of hinted a little bit to who he is a little bit and how he is. I love how they fleshed out his motivations and as to why he kind of established this Spider-Verse and established the hierarchy and kind of system that he is in. And I like how that he became the secondary antagonist of the movie. I have some ideas about what he can be and kind of a little bit more about him, but I would like to see where his arc continues in the next movie. All right, let's talk about Miles. Miles Morales. Just a great character. I think Miles as a Spider-Man is just great. I love kind of what they did with his arc and kind of how they really pushed his story. I just think they really developed him well. I like the character growth and development that he went through in the movie. And really, oh man, this is the super spoiler moment here. I love his core thing of, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. I love that. And that goes against kind of the entire core theme of the movie and canon events that Miles is the anomaly. I just love that. I love that. I also think the way they animated him was really, again, it's just so well done, especially his eyes. That's one of the things I think is really underrated with Spider-Man movies. And I definitely made this comment when I first saw Tom Holland in the MCU when his eyes were adjustable. I love that aspect because so much of Spider-Man's personality comes through his eyes. And yes, I did grow up with the Raimi movies, kind of dating myself here a little bit, but those were static eyes, right? They're not really animated. They don't really move much. Same with like the Amazing Spider-Man. They don't really move much. So a lot of Spider-Man's kind of personality gets lost in live action, but that is what's so great about the animated form is that you can show those emotions through those eyes. Yes, you can make the argument that Deadpool did try to do that, and yes, Deadpool kind of did. But just looking at Miles' eyes when he has the mask on and just seeing them go all kinds of shapes and sorts when it reflects his emotions, it's just so good. One of my follow-up pros I got here is that Miles' parents are big W parents, so I'm a fan of them. The core message of love and family, it's just nice to see. I think it's just a bit of positivity that it's nice that it's there. Having a character know that they are loved and that they have the support of their family no matter what is really nice. Again, I don't think a lot of families may necessarily have that exact representation. So it's at least nice to see that and get that kind of positivity from somewhere, even if you don't necessarily get it in your own life. So thought it was great. Another pro that I had, and this could kind of be seen as a con by a lot of other people, was I knew that this was going to be a part one. So if y'all don't already know, this movie kind of ends on a cliffhanger. Sets up for part two. But let me tell you, the reveal at the end, that is the cliffhanger, just the setup of that, I'm so pumped. And I'm fine with it kind of being a cliffhanger because one, it brings back a character that I really like. And two, I think it allows the next part to really be the encompassing aspect of all of these plot lines and all of these experiences that we have just gone through in the first two movies and to really appreciate it. Think about this. If the movie lasted another 15 minutes and he just had a random animated fight with Spot, would that have satisfied a lot of people? I don't know. Maybe. But for me, I think just allowing the plot to continue to fester and build up and give more development to the back end, especially the other side characters, especially in a world where there's multiple Spider-Men that have different backstories and histories that you can build upon, why rush it, man? So I loved it. I'm fine with it. I'm excited for the next one. This is my final pro. I thought that the Spot as the ultimate villain was just... that was just chef's kiss. Spot is a lesser known villain from the Spider-Man comics. So when I first saw him on screen, I was very happy to see a small character get represented on screen. And I love the changes that they made to his story arc, how they gave him reasoning as to why he became a supervillain, why he, quote unquote, is Spider-Man's nemesis. They gave him that backstory and motivation. And I think having the early Spot be kind of a joke and a meme, and then really transition him into this extremely dangerous and kind of universe ending boss at the end was just so cool. And I cannot wait to see that showdown, because every time Spot would tell Miles, I'm your nemesis, I'm your nemesis, I'm your nemesis, Miles wouldn't listen. But at the end, when shit got real, Miles admits that, yes, he's my nemesis. And that not only sets the villain's tone in the current sense, it sets the tone of dread of what Miles has to face when they return in the next film. And I love that. So, Spot, great pick for a villain. Love that shit. All right, that was a lot. Let's go to the cons. There really isn't too many here. I love this movie. But of course, the first one that I definitely need to talk about is the cliffhanger. It is a setup for part 2. That is a con. I won't sugarcoat it. I like the cliffhanger and what it sets up, but the fact that it is a cliffhanger kind of sucks. I will admit, I will agree to that. The second thing that I kind of found was a con was how Spider-Man 2099 kind of has the entire Spider-Verse under his thumb, in the sense that they kind of just listen to him for the greater good. But there's no way that you can't tell me that there isn't a version of Spider-Man that is a rebel. I know that there are some, but to have an entire multiverse in this one common denominator universe, be all kind of drawn to the same thing without much questioning, is kind of iffy. You know what I mean? It kind of leads to that whole Council of Ricks problem. But outside of those 2 complaints, I don't really have much of a problem with this movie at all. I thought this movie was wonderful. And my score at the end of the day is a 9.5 out of 10. Probably my favorite Spider-Man representation in all forms of media is this Miles Morales story. I think that the plot for the first movie, Into the Spider-Verse, was better, but this movie just took animation to the next level, and I'm just so pumped for the next movie that genuinely I'm probably more hyped for part 3 than I was coming into part 2. So, guess we'll wait and find out. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the noti bell. Until next time, stay hydrated. Peace, homies.